Hey babes, welcome or welcome back to And Everything in Between. I'm Victoria, your host and guide for navigating the beautiful chaos of your 20s. Whether you're building your dream career, figuring out relationships, or just trying to find you, this is your space for self-growth, real talk, and a little fun along the way. Let's dive into it and everything in between. In today's episode, we're talking about one of my favorite ways to set intentions for the new year, creating an ins and outs list. This is such a fun and empowering way to reflect on what's worth keeping around and what's worth leaving in the past, where it belongs. Let's dive in. So, why ins and outs? Remember back in 2020 when everyone and their mothers were sharing what's in and what's out for 2021 because we were all trying to get out of 2020. It started as a lighthearted social trend, but it honestly really stuck with me. Why? Because when I thought about it, this trend wasn't just about funny one-liners and getting over COVID. It was about boundaries and intentions and self-awareness, all wrapped up in a fun and approachable way. I still love seeing zodiac-inspired ins and outs, like for Libras, which I am. I remember seeing an out like being a people pleaser because you refuse to engage in conflict. I was like, wow, called out, automatic repost. For me, one of my biggest outs in 2024 was vaping. And I am so proud to be able to say that I have been vape free for an entire year. It was tough, but the payoff mentally and physically was definitely worth it. And it's important to also recognize that while you're creating ins and outs, you do need to have systems and habits in place that allow you to make sure that you're keeping things out where they need to be. So, what about you? What's something you're leaving in 2024? Maybe it's a bad habit or a toxic relationship or a belief that held you back from doing what you really wanted to do. Take a moment to reflect here because this is the foundation for creating your own list for 2025. I honestly have such a good feeling about 2025. It feels like a year bursting with potential. And while I'm a big believer in being realistic, because life is not all sunshine and rainbows, I want to approach this year with a balance of optimism and intentionality. So, here are my personal ins and outs for 2025. Let's start with the ins. Number 1, reading. This year, I was absolutely inspired by so many books that I was able to read, but one in particular really stood out to me and allowed me to become a better version of myself this year, and that is Atomic Habits. I honestly cannot rave about it enough. Going into 2025, I have a long list of similar books that I'm planning to dive into, and I'll definitely share those in a future episode. But reading is something that I want to make sure I bring with me into 2025 and beyond. Number 2, podcasts. Shout out to the Psychology of Your 20s. Gemma, the host of that podcast, is amazing at breaking down the psychological shifts we experience in this decade. She does an incredible job of using her psychology degree and bringing on doctors and experts in their field to talk about things like the psychology of toxic relationships or the psychology of relocating. And it really is so helpful to hear about the science of things and why certain things hold us back. Also, Alex Cooper from Call Her Daddy is honestly such a career inspiration for me. She is a boss, and no matter what you may think about Call Her Daddy, I love the show. The content of her podcast speaks to empowering women and giving life to the issues that we have to deal with, from health to the importance of healthy friendships. And that is incredibly important. She is also just a boss. She most recently signed a deal with SiriusXM to start her own media group. And she started a podcast with her best friend a couple of years after college, and it blew up after a few months of doing it. And that just speaks to the power of habits and just doing what you want to do. So she honestly is someone who is very inspiring for me. Number 3, parallel play. This year, I honestly was able to spend a lot of time sitting side by side my friends doing activities. And obviously, this is something that many of us were able to do as children growing up in school. So it's brought a lot of a similar comfort element to me that I don't want to let go. It's made me feel very childlike, and I get to be creative without the pressure of an art class that I have to pay $50 for, or a paint and sip out in New York where they're painting these dramatic things and I just want flowers and dots on my canvas. It's comforting and productive without the pressure. So I get to sit with my girls, catch up, and just have fun. Number 4, hosting events. 2025 will be the year I host more. I moved into a new apartment in, I want to say it was December 2023. And after being able to find a little bit of my footing and get settled into my apartment, me and my roommate just started having more people over and just feeling more comfortable in our space. And it really made me feel energized to be able to do that. So whether it's dinner for my family or a craft night with my friends, I want to put a lot more effort into intentional time with the people I love, especially if I have the space to be able to do it. And one day, this is a dream of mine, which it will come true. One day, I hope to be able to include a wider community of like minded people into this initiative. So, through this podcast, I hope to connect with people who want to do similar things, like host craft nights and reflect on their vision boards for the year, or have dinner parties where we just talk about spirituality and wellness and healthy living and, I don't know, just all of the things that I love to talk about. I want to be able to bring people together to do just that. Building and maintaining community is so important to me. I've been living by the idea that I don't want to wake up when I am 70 years old and regret my life. Right now, based on collective average lifespans in the United States, I have a good 70 years left on this planet, knock on wood. And I want to make the absolute most of it. So there's just no way that I will allow myself to not do the things that I want to do or spend time with the people that I want to spend time with, especially my family, most importantly, my family. And my chosen family, my friends. It's life is too short. We have to spend time with one another. So that one is incredibly important to me. Um, yeah, we don't get any more of our time back. So please spend it wisely. Number 5, going to bed early. Scrolling on TikTok until 2 a.m. Out. Building a soothing night routine that makes me want to go to bed instantly. In. I have spent too many hours earlier this year scrolling through TikTok at night or just not being intentional about going to bed and getting sleep. As a corporate girly, I have to be at my job at 9 o'clock in the morning. And then I don't get out of work until 6 o'clock in the evening. So sleep will allow me to be a better human being and a better employee. I can't keep going through the cycle of go to bed at 1:30, 2 sometimes because I'm scrolling or shopping online. Like, it's just not worth it. My sleep is so important, and I need to be more intentional about that. So, going into this year, I want to build a night routine that makes me feel good, where I can get at least 7 hours of sleep. And that means putting my phone across the room so that I just do not have access to it. My bed makes me feel better than my phone does. Okay, moving into the outs. Overconsumption. I did a lot, a lot, a lot of impulsive shopping this year, which was not nice for my bank account or my mental health. I just found myself, I was so grateful and privileged to get a promotion this year. And I just thought, oh my God, I just have all the money in the world to buy every single thing that I want. Money comes to me easily and it flows and it just grows on trees. So I can buy whatever I want and it doesn't matter. While that is true in a way, my spend to save ratio, they were not in alignment. They were not friends. I was not being smart about the way that I spend money. And I definitely did not need at least 70% of the things that I bought this year. So going into 2025, I will be sure to ask myself questions before I make purchases. And that includes buying food for lunch. If I don't bring a lunch with me, I do not need to spend $30 on sushi. I don't. I just don't. I can get a nice $10 sandwich from the corner deli bodega that will fill me up and allow me to have a nice, hearty, healthy dinner. I just need to be smarter about the way that I spend. Asking myself, do I need this before I buy it? And hoping that the answer is no. I don't want to continue to contribute to the system where we buy to minimally use and then throw away eventually just to buy again. Moving on to the next out, we have energy drainers. What a concept. You'd think that this is intuitive. And for you, I hope that it is, but I have often found myself being around people or saying yes to things to make others happy rather than myself. And that's a no-no in 2025. I refuse. If someone constantly leaves me feeling depleted or stuck in old patterns, I'm reevaluating that relationship. It's important to ask yourself how you feel when you're spending time with people? Are they making you happy? Are you learning from them? Or do you find yourself mentally exhausted after spending time with them? Or like your time is just being wasted entirely? Your energy is extremely precious. Protect it. The next out, okay, get ready for this one. Clubbing. Hear me out. While I love to dance and will usually consider my night out a failure if I did not dance at all, I am very much coming to a phase in my life where being pushed up against sweaty bodies and swept off my feet against my will is just not my vibe. Living in New York City, I feel very fortunate to be able to experience different places and have lounges or larger bars where I can dance as much as I want with my friends without feeling like I'm in a frat house basement. And that honestly is just another add-on to energy drainers. Like being in the club, playing uns music with a bunch of random it's just it drains me. It drains me. So I will continue to dance, but it will be in places that don't make me feel terrible. Moving on to the collective. Now, let's take the time to zoom out. There's a lot of shifts and changes happening all over the world where a lot of the news and what's happening in the world feels mostly negative and devastating than anything else. And honestly, with the news that I'm tuned into, it's true. There is a lot more negative than positive happening out in the world, and it's extremely terrifying. I'm just going to put it how it is. I am a little nervous about the state of the next year and the next 5 to 10 and what that will look like for me, my family, the people I love, Black people, minorities as a whole, women, the LGBTQ community. I could go on. It's a bit scary, but I believe it's important to think about what's in and what's out on a collective level so that we can all have a better idea of how we can support each other from the things that are happening, or where we can denounce the negativity and the things that are affecting our family and friends on a larger level. So I have a little list here. I want to hear from you all about what you think should be a part of this list. But it's very small. I just want to dive into a few. Collective ins. Number 1, community organizing. What happened to getting back into the community? I honestly may just be speaking for myself, and that's okay. This is my show, but I have spent a lot of time this year being victim to the news that I've been hearing and not being an active member or participant to supporting the communities that have been affected. While I do donate money or I sign petitions, that's not enough. It is very much time, if you have not been already, and I'm speaking mostly to myself, it is time now more than ever to be an active part of the conversations that are happening and an active part of the activities that are being planned to uplift the communities that you are a part of or that your friends and family are a part of so that they can be supported and that you can play an active part in supporting that community. It's extremely important. And I'll dive into this in future episodes about ways that you can get involved in your own communities. And if you happen to live in New York, I'll talk a little bit about what I'm doing and the communities that I am hoping to be a part of this upcoming year. Next, supporting Black-owned businesses. Very much needs to happen. If you want to support a Black-owned business, you can do so by sharing this podcast. But I will also dive into Black-owned businesses and brands and how you can build a business in future episodes. Prioritizing health and wellness collectively, it needs to be talked about more. We need to share more tips and tools about how to do this, but this needs to be a collective priority, prioritizing your health and your well-being on a personal level, because the government is not going to take care of you. Lastly, sustainable living. I can go into a whole rant. This will be a future episode, but I can go into a whole rant right now about climate change. I am very passionate about the climate and being a positive contributor to the world. And our earth, our land is extremely vulnerable. And while the earth goes through cycles, we have played an extremely active role, a dangerous role in the state that has led to it being December and it's 60 degrees and there hasn't been a snowfall yet. That's extremely scary. So there are many things that you can do on a day-to-day to practice sustainable living. Something that I do, something that I've done for the past going on 13 years now, I have been a vegetarian. I do not eat meat. I am extremely scared about the meat that is put out for the people of the United States to eat. That will be a whole nother episode about health, healthy eating, how you can be a positive contributor to the earth and the world as a whole. But I think we really just need to think about sustainable living and how the ways in which we can live sustainably as we move towards an earth that gets hotter and hotter and hotter. Collective outs. There are 3. I'm not diving into them. They are extremely intuitive and I just need to call them out. Number 1, racism. Number 2, war. Number 3, fascists. What would you add to this list? DM me on Instagram or comment on this episode's post to share your ideas. Better yet, think about how you can contribute to these collective goals in your community or even in your everyday life. So, tell me, what is on your 2025 ins and outs list? Take a moment this week to sit down with your journal or even just a piece of paper. Write your 2025 ins and outs and don't be afraid to dream big. What's one thing you're calling in that feels almost impossible? Take the time to honor yourself by calling in the things that you know will benefit your well-being and release the things that no longer serve you. Thank you so much for tuning in. If this episode resonated with you or would be helpful for someone you know, please subscribe on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube and share it with a friend. You can also follow the podcast on Instagram at and.everything.inbetween for updates, and you can find me on Instagram at victoria.liverpool. This podcast is sound designed and edited by Misty Avenger. Music for this podcast is The Dude by Matt Large, courtesy of Epidemic Sound. Details provided in the description. Remember, episodes drop weekly on Sundays at 7 p.m. Until then, keep growing, glowing, and remember, you got this.